It was single malt that brought us to this, not whiskey. This is where single malt is made. We learn from the salt makers, we learn from the chefs, from an innovation and creativity and just passion perspective. There's no better place to be in this business.
If you say whiskey in the US, most people assume you're talking about bourbon. When you say whiskey most anywhere else in the world, people assume you're talking about single malt. It is the whiskey of the world. There are regional styles. It is something that speaks of its origins, and Westward is that kind of whiskey. This area is known also for beer and also for wine as well. These are excellent growing conditions, and it's because of the environment that we think a lot of great producers end up here and making what they make. We are actually on the same latitude as Burgundy, France, so a lot of Chardonnay, a lot of Pinot Noir has been planted here. Same with beer. The majority of the hops that are grown in the country are grown just a few miles north of the distillery in the Yakima Valley. This is the environment that produces a lot of great spirits and a lot of great wine and beer.
American traditional whiskey that's made in Kentucky and Tennessee are utilizing the elements that are there in their backyards. We wanted to take that same idea of, harvesting what is local to us and utilizing what is grown around us to then create something that is different and elevated.
And when you do all that and you do it here, and the people here are the ones doing it, you end up with some of the best whiskey in the world.
In a culture of makers, we have a lot of people that appreciate not just single malt, but our food scene here as well. The abundant resources that we have in the Pacific Northwest and what those offer as far as making certain things, and the collaborative spirit that engenders as we all come together more and more. We all have the same level of appreciation and the same level of education. I train everyone when they get hired on. They know everything I know. I'm now the head distiller, head blender, but my journey started with an appreciation for single malt. Really, ultimately that was it. Single malt whiskey was the most delicious kind of whiskey that I thought there was in the world, and that I wanted to be a part of that.
We are a company that was built on the love of the bar and restaurant community. If I was going to step out from behind the bar, which is a job that I love doing for the better part of 2 decades, it had to be to go work with a company that really aligned with my ideas of what quality is. There's such a passion behind Westward. There is this commitment to not taking shortcuts and making sure that everything is done the right way. And, it helps that the whiskey is incredible.
What we want to make is something that's really, this isn't going too far, that's something that really touches your soul. It's fun to drink it. It's also really fun to make it.
Westward is an expression of the elements of the American Northwest, and it begins as barley that grows in the Northwest, in Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, a little bit of Montana and California. That barley later comes to Portland and is malted, and then we take that malt, we brew kind of a classic American pale ale, but not for the purpose of bottling beer, but rather for the purpose of pot distilling it twice to then arrive at a really flavorful, robust spirit that we put in new American oak barrels, typically for 4 years, sometimes a little longer.
One of the unsung heroes that I don't think we talk about that often are the farmers that we work with. Not only the people that grow this grain and the quality of the grain that they're committed to, but then also the farmers that we give our spent grain to. We work with a dairy farmer here in just outside of Clackamas. He has a dairy farm that we give all our grain to, and he feeds that to his cows. So yeah, from the beginning of the process to the very end of the process, we're involved with growers and farmers. They are definitely the unsung heroes.
We have 70% of America's barley grown in our backyard in the Pacific Northwest. So to make a single malt, an American single malt, was something that was a natural choice. We're using the natural resources. We have an incredible water source here in Oregon. We have this barley growing all over our region. We have the most incredible malting facility on the West Coast. So putting all of that together creates this really unique, special whiskey. And then the way that we treat it with our process is We take our time. We don't take any shortcuts. We do a long fermentation that really allows us to develop all of those flavors and aromas that come through in the final product. To have that history of beverage innovation, it really makes sense that we, created a whiskey to go along with that movement. Westward being an American whiskey elevated really means that we were not looking to recreate what was already being done for centuries, for generations in other parts of America. We wanted to take the idea of American whiskey and elevate it to something that had never been really played with before.
Single malt whiskey is what many people who love whiskey consider to be the highest expression of whiskey. From a product standpoint, it means whiskey that is made from 100% malted barley, and it can then be distilled and aged in any number of ways, but it's that use of malted barley as the grain that makes it unique in the world of whiskey.
I think there are definitely flavors that are unique to Westward. I don't think that anybody has this big, robust, malty backbone that we have, especially when you're talking about American whiskey. What does make it special and what makes it appealing to the whiskey drinker is that there are elements that they're going to recognize. It's not going to be something so shocking to your palate that you don't understand it, but it's going to be familiar enough but different enough for you to fall in love.